the Charge Affairs and Head of Development at the Embassy of Ireland, the project steering and advisory committee members, Irish and Makerere scholars and management of the project, staff and PhD research teams and Kondo community stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen. I'm standing here to represent the Vice Chancellor, who should have been here to make his opening remarks, but unfortunately he cannot be here because there is University Council which has just commenced. So that even myself I have this occasion because the university puts emphasis on this kind of thing. So I make the remarks on behalf of the Vice Chancellor. On behalf of Makerere University, I welcome you to the Water is Life Amazigulamu End of Project Conference. Let me take this opportunity to thank the Irish Development Corporation for their continued support to Makerere University. This Water is Life project, which started in 2010, benefited both Irish and Ugandan scholars to understand more issues surrounding our valuable water resource. I thank the development studies which coordinated the project and other participating units like technology, women and gender studies, School of Health Sciences, from where the PhD scholars were recruited. The project enabled a partnership between Makerere and Irish universities, through which knowledge was generated on sustainable water management as a catalyst for socio-economic development. Our doctoral and some research teams explored issues of water access, utilization, and management for sustainable development. This multidisciplinary project enriched our knowledge on appropriate water health, which are pertinent for our policies, communities, and development. The unique aspect of this project was to enhance the university's outreach programs. Our local communities in Makonda and Masaka actively participated and benefited from the interaction with the researchers. In addition to scholarly outcomes, our doctoral team should devise more strategies of disseminating their findings to Makonda communities for their continued benefit. Knowledge from the project should also help to meaningfully contribute to policies on water resource access, management, and utilization in our country. The project has also helped in building our university's capacity through PhD training for our staff. This will enhance our teaching and research capacity at Makerere University. And we can confidently conclude that the project achieved its major objective and that therefore it was beneficial. I am aware that we are in the process of approving a jointly taught master's degree focusing on water resource. This will benefit from the knowledge and capacity generated from the project, thus ensure that educational sustainability and longevity of the program, It will benefit academics, development workers, stakeholders, policymakers, both in Ireland and in Uganda. Makerere University will give all the support for the fruition of this master's program. We look forward to more collaborations and partnerships for our mutual benefit as we build for the future. Thank you very much.
I won't repeat all the welcomes, but I'd just like to say special welcome to all the members of the community who are here and who are such an integral part of the project. So you're very, very welcome. So thank you very much, Deputy Vice Chancellor, for those welcoming and insightful words. And I'd now like to call on Mr. Donald Cronin, who will shortly declare the Irish Embassy and welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you all. Usually in Uganda there's a long list of protocol, and one has to go through all of that and then say all protocol observed to be a supporter of. Irish Aid has been a proud sponsor of this programme since the outset, and critical in this has been the strong partnership model that has been used with the Irish higher education institutions from Trinity, I've seen people here from Maynooth, DCU, Queen's, UCD, the Royal College of Surgeons and so on, Makerere University of course, and the various NGOs and community groups all combining together for a common purpose, a common vision, and that has been a truly inspiring way of working that we have been so happy to support. Ireland's new policy for international development was released there just last year. It's called One World, One Future, and it commits our government to exploring further where Ireland's experience can be brought to bear to help strengthen institutions in developing countries in delivering results. But of course it's a two-way thing, because the more our institutions in Ireland engage with institutions in places such as Uganda, the more we also learn from that, and the more we're enriched as a country. And so we see our partnership in places like Uganda as a two-way thing, where we're both benefiting partnerships that we enter into. They are the values that we hold dear and which we share with the partners that we work with. And so I would like to commend all those who have been involved in this successful program, the team at Dundalk Institute of Technology, Arlene, and all those who've been working very strongly behind for your active participation, Makerere University for your critical work on the ground here, and the NGOs, organisations and community groups, such as the Medical Missionaries of Mary, who are here present today, for the sterling work that you have been doing. And I know the strong work that the Medical Missionaries of Mary have been doing in Uganda now for, I think, almost 40 years at this stage, which is very, very commendable. Ireland recognises that the water challenge is central to human development and economic growth. Access to safe drinking water is a precondition for health and for the success in the fight against poverty, hunger, child and infant mortality, and also gender inequality. Children's well-being is particularly dependent, as you all know, on both the quality and the availability of water. Ireland continues to focus on increasing access to safe drinking water, and we do that in so many different ways, through national development plans, working with governments, NGOs, through advocacy and governance reforms, through the humanitarian work that we support, where water becomes a critical component in that, and also in terms of climate change adaptation, which for us is becoming more central in the focus of our aid program and the focus of our policy. This research you have been facilitating in support of sustainable water resource management has the real potential to act as a catalyst, a spark for sustainable economic and social development on the ground where it matters in Uganda. And we do know, and we are very conscious that the needs are very many. We see the 2011 Ministry of Water and Environment Performance Report, which recorded stagnation in levels of water supply coverage, 66% in urban areas and 65% in rural areas. The 2012 report actually reported a decrease in rural areas to 64%, mainly as a result of the creation of many new districts, a reduction in the budget for water and sanitation here in Uganda in 2012. So there is still a way to go before Uganda meets its own targets of increasing access to safe water in both rural and urban areas. The challenges of high population growth and rapid urbanization, you have to run fast to stand still here. The population is growing by up to 1 million people per annum, so even where you're increasing water coverage and access, you still have more people that you need to cater for. An aging infrastructure, water infrastructure that is here, and the increasingly detrimental impacts of climate change are all issues that I'm sure that you are very much well aware of. And so the 8 PhD research projects that have been supported and the partnerships that you have been developing will go a long way in understanding and proposing solutions to the problem of clean water provision in this country and elsewhere. And I've seen many examples that you have been working on in that. For example, advancing water pump and GIS technology, using solar disinfection, looking at the important links between gender, water management and health, and also, crucially, enabling community-based management systems. So by building research capacity, advancing knowledge, spurring these types of partnerships and community-based action, this program has shown what can be done when people do get together and tackle issues collectively. And it's great to hear of the visit that was here this week in Macondo and the warm reaction that was felt and the great participation by ordinary villagers with the research, the questions that were being asked and the interest that is shown. We know that water is such an important resource here, and to see research which often is up here meet the community which is down here in a very vibrant way is a fantastic achievement which must be applauded. We in Irish Aid have learned that it is equally important to improve understanding amongst policymakers and practitioners of how to analyse the governance and the political economy of water and sanitation in any given context, in order to inform policy, programming and influencing work. In other words, we do need technical solutions. We do need to have grassroots efforts. We do need laws and policies and strategies, but there is an inherent need for us to understand better what drives or blocks change in any country, in any community, the incentives that are involved, and the power relations that are at the heart of all of this. We need to understand the deeply rooted historical factors that influence behaviour, the social and cultural views that establish incentives and define agendas, and the political logic at play at the local level and at the national level that drives the use of resources. We may complain, for example, that the percentage of the budget devoted to water and sanitation is going down, but we need to understand what's behind that. What are the incentives and the drivers at play, and what are the buttons that we need to push to try and advance on areas that are particularly important. The evidence also shows that when it comes to development, local solutions anchored in local realities and supported by strong leadership work best. And as a donor, we've been in Uganda for 20 years now. This is a vitally important sentence for us, because I think too often as donors we have come in with our solutions, with our pre-packaged, ready-made solutions to problems we find on the ground. And I think there is a shift now, and a very real one, where we are realising that it's actually local solutions, right down at the grassroots level, are the ones that work best. They've worked for many millennia, and why should they not work now? And so it takes us as donors to be more humble, more realistic, and to support local efforts to ensure the problems that are being faced by people on the ground can be solved by people on the ground. And I think that is why this program is a very good example of how you're trying to mobilise thinking on the ground, mobilise community action, and bring the edge of research and experience and knowledge from elsewhere to fruition at the grassroots level. And so it remains for me to thank you once again for the great efforts and to wish you every success in this your final conference. It is our hope that this programme will lead to clear results which can be tracked over time, that the learning from this programme can inform our approach more generally, as I say, and partnerships of this kind as well. And that the partnerships developed will be sustained and built upon. We look forward to seeing the outcomes of your work, and in particular how the unique knowledge and learning from this programme can be shared and sustained over time. So the very best of luck. Thanks very much.
Dr. Salinan, give us remarks started cleaning it for about 5 years, bring activities, and watch things out.
Good morning, everybody. Deputy Vice Chancellor, Director of the Irish Embassy, sisters, academic colleagues, WIL partners, and conduit community workers and friends. You're all very welcome and thank you for attending. I'm just going to give a very brief overview of the Water is Life project from its inception to where we're at now. This is our third and final conference workshop, so there's quite a lot that we have to report on at this stage. In terms of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to set the scene firstly. I'm going to look at some of our progress to date, and then I'm really going to ask us some questions, maybe I can talk about the discussion later about where do we go from here. So in terms of Water is Life, many of us know where it's come from, but just if you're not fully familiar, it's funded by Irish Aid, HEA program.
An insight where you can actually go and use that in terms of policy and strategy on a local level. Okay, so we'll go back to functional water sources. And again, this is a study of functional water sources. So what we just looked at was how unreliability disadvantages the users when their local water source doesn't work. They have to walk further and it takes a lot of energy. But let's look at that from another angle. How does that affect the community as a whole? So again, this is Sam's working water sources, and we've seen this before. These are also during the project.
Of any use to anybody, we need to know what those local realities are. So the social science team decided that the best way to go about this was to do a baseline survey, to go and work in the area, to survey it and see what the people could tell us about their lives and about their lives in relation to water. Needless to say, this couldn't have been done without the medical missionaries of Mary hosting us and our movement into the community. And Sister Ursula and Sister Helen are here today, so we need to thank them as we launch this survey. The community worker and with us today is Gerald, one of the ones, if you'd like to stand up, Gerald. He is one of the community health workers who carried out these surveys, 600 of them or so. And our two PhD researchers, now doctors, Dr. Philminas and Dr. Richard, are the people that spent months in the parish going from door to door, going from household to household, interviewing the people to talk to them about what was their daily reality, to get some baseline sense of what the political economy of water was in that region. And the outcome of that is this little green book that you have here. So not only have Dr. Richard and Dr. Philminas produced very big PhD projects, they have also been central to the production of this particular piece of work. We're hoping if further funding comes around somehow, that this is always a survey that can be revisited. That's what we mean by baseline. We have done a proper case study of the area at a social scientific level, and we want to be sure that in 10 years we can go back there and hopefully see that something has changed, that the daily lives of people working with water, struggling for water, has changed somewhat. But of course, water is central and it affects everything about the household income. So in this research, we had to go about finding out all of if you go to the table of contents, you'll see that we found out not only the information there that Michael has delivered you, but we took a profile of the respondents. What were these households like? We talked to them about the household poverty. What was the level of poverty that they lived with and they experienced? We then moved on to the access to water as it being a central factor in poverty. And then we talked to them about health and water. One way that we measured that was the question on how many meals had been eaten by the respondents in that day. And so just to give you a very straightforward fact, 64% had 3 or more meals a day. but the 36% had only 1 or 2 meals a day, at least before the survey data was recorded. The time that this survey was done was September to November. 15 villages in the parish were visited and surveyed. The general aim was to talk to people about access, livelihoods, their health, the gender issues that emerged in relation to water, and then the water governance issues. Why were the pumps not working, or why did the people think the pumps were not working? And that again refers back to something Donal mentioned about working with governments and working with people to understand what is happening in their own locality. So overall, quite a large survey, but that makes it very representative. 547, by the time we cleaned the data, we had 547 valid household participants for both the spatial and statistical analysis. So the types of things that we were asking there.
Gonza to talk about his project, which is to do with gender and local water governance. So Richard, if you'd like to here, please.
In each of my objectives. Methodology, our case study was Makondo, but my methods were mixed. I used the mixed method design, and it was sequential, qualitative, in the sense that I carried out the survey, which has been talked about, which was the quantitative, and followed it up with the focus group discussions, 11 of them, 20 in-depth interviews with the different actors in Makondo, the sub-county and the local level, the LC chairpersons and all these people. Participant observation, I did all these and the men alone. So I got the key findings on access. Some of these have been mentioned by Michael and Honor, so I won't dwell on them. But the major determinants of access to water for women and men and children were the technologies themselves, the improved and unimproved water sources, which have been mapped nicely by Michael and the project. The formal institutions within the parish, the technologies. But what that graph shows is that most of the people or the households got their water from unimproved sources, over 40%. So that is really very important for us to note. And the reasons they gave were that many of the unimproved or the open sources were closer to the households. Owners talked about these issues of proximity and reliability, but maybe I need to talk about the need for the communities. The people argue that they don't need operation and maintenance fees for the open sources because these are not run by committees or anything. So they gave that as a reason as to why they can use the term. So we also had issues. I will talk about the roads later on, but Michael has talked about he called them the roads that people were using every day to transport water. Many of them were rugged and hilly. As you saw from the map, many of these sources were actually in the valleys, and the women and children had to collect water from the valleys. So that was a burden. Those are some of the burdens that the women and children were facing. Then I'll go to the institutions, that is the water user committees. As we know, the mechanics, the chairpersons and the committees, and this contentious issue of the repair fees. Children collect water most in this community. And water collection perhaps is no longer a question of the technology or the distance and the time that people are spent to collect water. But there are other neglected burdens like the roads that the children use and the women, the queues, the heavy loads that they carry, and the related health effects, and other risks like drowning and rape. When I come to participation, is that although in policy, the national water policy on the collaboration between the powerful village chairpersons, the water user committees, and the handpump mechanics, the policy states that village chairpersons are simply ex-officials on the committees. But I think from what we've seen, village chairpersons need to play a bigger role in the community with regard to access to water. Then standardizing the size of the water vessels carried by women and children, and encouraging fencing of oil and improved sources to reduce the risks of drowning, for example. Restrictions on water collection times, and perhaps stringent bylaws that can protect women and children from rape and other risks. Strengthening women's representation and voice in water user committees is very important. I think it is possible to make it mandatory that every water user committee in the parish or in Uganda, in rural Uganda, should have 50% female composition. If it doesn't have, then maybe it is illegal. That is my view. Then sensitize and train women and men and the village chairpersons about the burdens they face, the benefits of participating in governance of water sources, and of course about these stereotypes and patriarchal beliefs, which are very difficult to fight, as we know in social science, but gradually a change can come.
Water is not safe for drinking unless it's treated. Basically, in most rural areas, people think, okay, when you harvest rainwater is safe, okay? But from my findings, it's not safe. It requires to be treated before it's taken. And then, as I've told you that I looked at studies to find out if it's effective in Makondo, in rural areas of Uganda, surely it was found very effective, and therefore it can be used for treating drinking water. The other thing is, I can conclude that most of these antimicrobial drugs, or what we call antibiotics that are used in Makondo, are resistant. Microorganisms don't respond. And therefore, I would recommend a better study in terms of time, because I tested that microbial sensitivity for only 4 months. Basically, I would say we need like 12 months to say on ground there is resistance of these organisms. And then my last conclusion on CPC, which is treating 25 liters a day, is also effective. If you can afford storing it, it's also another way that you can really access safe drinking water. What are my conclusions? For safety reasons, we need to treat our harvested rainwater before we drink it to be sure that we are safe from diseases. The other thing is to minimize on contamination levels. For example, we said most of these tanks were having contaminated water. What can we do to minimize on these levels? Please, you should keep your tank closed. You should avoid birds, animals accessing your water, and then your collection area should be well maintained. And from my findings, we found out that at the beginning of the rainy season, your water is more contaminated than in the middle of the rainy season or during the dry season. What does that mean? When it rains at the starting of rainy season, I would recommend that you forego that first rain and then you correct other rains. The other thing is, I've said it already, one of my recommendations is a long-time study on these antimicrobial resistant strains. And then finally, I would recommend that if you can, the CPC, the 25-liter machine, you can install it in medical centers, in restaurants, in schools, and get safe drinking water. Finally,
follow the norm and do if external interventions are to enhance future adaptive capacity. In other words, the abilities of people are platforms from which external interventions can take form. Thank you very much.
That solar is very effective in clear water. Most
also, I think when you have rain harvested water, then people have the water nearby them, the children don't have to travel very far to collect water. It is easier to maintain, people take more responsibility to maintain a source that they call theirs than a communally owned water source. School pupils are very effective. Schools or pupils are very effective agents of change and should be involved in the promotion of any community health programs. We should not ignore them and say, oh, those are children, there's nothing they can contribute. As we have seen, they are very, very great agents of change. So those are my key recommendations, although I had major recommendations, but I just decided to pull out a few recommendations.
Increasing the lifespan of the hand pump by 2 years. The hand pump life is 7 to 15 years. Now if we increase its life by 2 years, what does that mean? And bearing in mind that the intervention we're using is specifically looking at the most problematic area. So we're reducing on the maintenance, and so we help the people in Macondo by not demanding maintenance fees for them, and at the same time, we increase the lifespan of the hand pump. Thank you very much.
The dilemma of children as channels to water is there because they are the ones who are collecting the water mostly. And then there is that notion of the expertise. People concentrate on provision of water, but they don't consider the containers that will collect that water, which is a major limitation. So I conclude by saying that water management is the gendered predicament. Disempowerment of women and tokenism in community management of water constraints low performance. And then the social cultural perspective to water and health is a critical element in our women's everyday life. We should get water closer to the women's households. We should avoid the predetermined packages that focus on the biomedical model to health, so that we look at the social cultural issues. And then we should engage women more meaningfully and get out of their rhetoric. And then we should promote dialogue at community level to get men back into the social processes with regards to water. Thank you very much.
As I spoke, and this will not only involve just action, but also continuous research. We have to keep learning at every moment. The disconnect between communities and service providers needs to be built. We need to build trust. We need to support extension workers to support communities in dialogue. And all this should remain consistent. We need the bylaws, and all this can make a difference. We need to incentivize water user committees or sanitation committees and water source caretaking in many ways. I do not want to elaborate on this, but those are important areas of action. Strengthening relations between non-governmental organizations, actors, and the local government to build partnerships with them and the community. And of course, deepening decentralization using principles of subsidiarity, where the smallest action can best produce results. That's where we invest the money. And lastly, thank you very much. Thanks for listening. Thanks for bringing me as the last presenter among the researchers.
Some question answers. Probably the easiest way to organize this would be if the 8 speakers could come and maybe stand at the front, and we take some questions, and then I can hand around the microphone quickly. So if